Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD Pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association podcast called What is Business Development? Are you wondering what ABM is? And maybe you don't even know what ABM is, what it stands for. How about CBM? How about that acronym? Well, these are marketing terms that business developers really need to know about in order to succeed and work as one team with the marketers to achieve growth and success. And hey, if you want to achieve growth and success in your own personal business development career, well, get yourself a copy of the Business Development Body of Knowledge. It's available on Amazon, and read it. And then you can take the BDP exam. That is the Business Development Professional Certification exam at the GBDA website. You can find a link to that and register for the exam and become a certified business development professional. And if you're listening to the show, you've been a longtime listener, you've really liked the show, give us a like, give us some comments, give us a review on the location where you like to listen to this. And when we post it on LinkedIn, engage with our content. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject with someone who engaged with my LinkedIn post. It was a LinkedIn post about content from the Business Development Body of Knowledge. And here's the graphic that I used for that LinkedIn post. And it's describing the difference between account-based marketing versus content-based marketing. Now, before we get into what this LinkedIn post was about, I'd like to introduce our guest today. And our guest today is Kristina Jaramillo. And Kristina is the president of Personal ABM. She's helped sales and marketing drive greater account-based revenue growth by changing the interactions they have with buyers and the account experiences they deliver. Her clients landed $500,000 deals with tier one enterprise organizations that have gone silent after initial engagement with campaigns. They have increased their enterprise win rates by more than 100% and doubled their ACV by 2x to 3x. Wow. Those are some impressive enhancements. And Kristina, let's go ahead and bring her to the stage. Kristina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I am too. And so we'll give folks a little bit of context here. I posted the LinkedIn post with this visual. Folks that are just listening to this and not watching, it's a LinkedIn graphic that I included with my post. Again, we're describing the difference between account-based marketing and content-based marketing. And it shows the typical pyramid we see for how the market is represented. And the bottom of the pyramid shows the bottom 30%. These are people that are absolutely not in market, don't have a care in the world, and absolutely not interested in your product. And then the next layer up in the pyramid is the 30% that don't think they are currently interested in a solution like yours. And then that's followed by the next layer up, and that's the 30% that aren't thinking about it right now. Followed by the next layer up, that's the 7% who are in the activation phase. And this is where BD really gets involved in our prospecting. Okay, this is where we're talking to prospects because they think they have an issue. They have a problem and they're looking for a solution. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid is the 3%. These folks are in the conversion phase. They are actually in the buying cycle. This is where sales gets involved to help convert them as efficiently and effectively into customers. So I described all this in a LinkedIn post. And I have to say, when I wrote the Business Development Body of Knowledge, on page 1, I encouraged everybody to read the content with a discerning mindset. And if they ever found anything they disagreed with, to please please reach out to me and let me know, because by disagreeing, this is how we all learn together. I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm a subject matter explorer. And it was so great to see when I posted my LinkedIn post that Kristina enthusiastically disagreed with my position. And it was fantastic. I loved it. I reached out to her immediately and we engaged in dialogue. And today, this is the first episode. This is the first time anybody's disagreed with what I posted. So, Kristina, thank you. You win the prize for being the first. And so this is my first, what I call a BD Dojo episode, where we can engage in academic conversation, and we can disagree to disagree, or we can agree to disagree. So let's jump right into this, Kristina. First, let's talk about how did you get into the field of marketing, and specifically why account-based marketing?
It's interesting. It wasn't my direct path after school and everything. I'd had previous jobs in corporate, and I started working on the side with a content marketer, article marketer. So had a PR background, a communications background, and at the time he was just writing different pieces of content, and then he started utilizing LinkedIn and realized see how he could leverage the content on LinkedIn. And it kind of just evolved from there, where the business grew. I left my full-time job and just kind of went with marketing and account-based in particular, because we noticed that the more personal you can get, the more relevant you get, the more success you have. And then along the way, we also adopted the Challenger sale, which you could probably tell from the post on LinkedIn. If for anyone who doesn't know, teach for differentiation, tailor for relevance. That's quick synopsis in a giant body of work. But we kind of use those premises or those processes and those that kind of mindset in our content. And we realized it was creating wins for ourselves, but also for our clients. So it kind of just evolved out of nowhere. It wasn't like something that I set out to do initially.
Yeah, well, you're an expert in account-based marketing. And so I was really excited to be able to reach out and communicate with you and share my perspectives and also hear yours. And I'll just summarize real quickly the post that I presented, and then we'll jump right into your perspective. So what I indicated in the post was that you have account-based marketing and content-based marketing. And the distinction between those two is that account-based marketing, in my understanding, is that ABM sparks engagement. It targets the prospects who match your ideal customer profile. They should have the budget, the need, and the credibility, but you don't know for sure if they're actively searching for solutions. So BD identifies the targets and the intent signals. Marketing runs the personalized ad campaigns to those ICP targets. And that ABM wedge in the graphic kind of covers the 60% of folks in the pyramid that don't think they're interested or not currently thinking about it. And then the content-based marketing approach focuses on problem-aware prospects, okay? So these are the folks that are in that 7% higher up in the pyramid that are in the activation phase. And the CBM focuses on, those prospects that are searching for solutions and engaging with your content. And marketing tracks the owned media intent signals. Okay, these are signals of the people that you're talking to and watching them hit your website, watching them engage with your LinkedIn posts. And then BD confirms the prospect is indeed in market. We're qualifying them, we're nurturing them. And then together we do that nurturing with our marketing teammates. So the CBM, the bottom line is that CBM is faster because it prioritizes those warm in-market prospects. ABM builds that bow wave of ideal prospects driving long-term growth. So, Kristina, I think the first topic that we wanted to address is, that there is this difference between ABM and CBM. CBM's focusing on that top 10% folks in market. ABM's focusing on that 60% that aren't in market yet. Would you agree with that?
So The reason I challenge you is because what you describe as CBM sounds a lot to me like intent-based marketing. So that's the reason I thought that it was a little different, because I feel like content should be tied to all levels of your account-based approach on both sides of the aisle. So intent-based marketing focuses on that small percentage of accounts that are supposedly in market. But ABM is not meant to source the pipeline. That's account-based demand gen. So when you focus, what you really should be focusing on is your total relevant market and your ICP. But most people are putting like demand gen into the one-to-many category, because if we think about it in your pyramid type of way, it's the one-to-many on the bottom, one-to-few in the middle, and then one-to-one at the very top. So if you are focusing on accounts, or if accounts are going dark because teams are focusing on getting as many accounts as possible into that pipeline versus accounts that are aligned with you. So are these accounts aligned with you? Are they strategically ready for your solution? Do they have a strategic priority in place? So teams that are focused on pipeline numbers rather than accounts that are strategically ready for your solution, it's harder to get the revenue results you're looking for. So for me, demand gen should really focus on building that engagement with the ICP accounts that should be in market rather than the ones that are. They should be in market, but they aren't. And ABM is about getting those accounts to revenue, not accounts to pipeline. So that's the little distinction that I see. But again, everything should be related to content, because content is what's going to move everyone forward. And it's just the level of content that you give depending on where they are in their journey to kind of move them, whether they're on the customer side and you're trying to expand, whether you're trying to open a new relationship, or whether you're trying to save an account or even compete with, an existing solution or maybe a piece of software that's in place and you're trying to displace them. So content should really be that hub that moves all these pieces.
Yeah. Okay. So I got it. Content should really be the foundation here, and I agree with you. Now, in my defense, okay, marketers love to create new words for existing concepts that already have words identified with them.
Oh, tell me about it.
So when I wrote the marketing chapter of the business development body of knowledge, it was a tremendous learning experience for me. Again, I'm a subject matter explorer, not a subject matter expert. You're the subject matter expert in ABM, so I'm really glad we can talk today. And when you look at the marketing chapter of the business development body of knowledge, it actually walks through each type of business development tactic. And as I walk through all the different terms, whether it's ABM, CBM, you name it, I also list the other terms that I found in my research that describe the exact same thing. I think for some tactics and concepts, I was up to like 10 different words. And I'm like, all right, marketing people, please stop. I know you're brilliant. I know you can create, like creativity is your superpower, but please stop creating new words to describe the exact same thing that other people already established. And so, we talk about ABM versus CBM, and maybe what's important here in this discussion is not to get wrapped around the axle about what the actual words are. Is really more important to talk about the actual concepts. And when I was, putting this graphic together so that business developers could understand what marketing is talking about, I use the CBM terminology to draw a distinction that this is the content engagement level when that prospects enters into the activation phase of the customer journey. I think we're talking about the same thing here. I think we both agree that content, yes, is absolutely critical. Marketing is creating content. BD people are creating content now more and more. We're writing LinkedIn posts. I just saw, I've seen companies recently, and this is a new trend, in the job descriptions for new roles, that companies are asking that the people that are candidates, are actually business developers that are candidates, actually have a presence online. So I think employers now are starting to realize, wow, this can be really powerful to bring on BD people that actually have a big community, that have a voice and have a following. And so I think that's a really exciting trend. So BD people, marketing, we're all creating content together. I think the distinction is when you're looking at the different layers, the 60%, well, let's call it the 90%, the bottom 90% that supposedly aren't in market yet. They haven't identified a reason to buy yet. This is where marketing is so critical, folks. And the content that you produce is so critical. And that's called, demand gen. It's being out there, it's having a voice, it's being engaged with the community. So even though somebody is not actually engaging with your content, they are. It's the dark, it's the dark funnel, that you can't see any intent signals, but people are out there and they're engaging with it. They're listening to it. They're sticking this podcast in their ears right now. And that is engagement. It just doesn't show up as an intent signal. And I think what you're saying, Kristina, is that when you get that intent signal, when you get that trigger, whether they reach out to a business developer and go, hey, I have some questions about your product, or they respond to some sort of cold outbound. It could be any measure, but once there's that trigger that says, okay, they're interested, they want to engage, that's when the game shifts. You're still producing content, but the content changes, right?
Correct. The level of level of relevance and personalization and tailored to their specific, not necessarily use case, but their organization, that also increases the closer they are, where they are in their journey.
Okay. All right. So I'll call round one of this dojo event a draw. Well, I think we agree in concept. We probably disagree on the words we use to describe the concept.
What marketing should just create the sources for everything, because account-based is something that sales has been doing for who knows how long. We just kind of made it pretty termed around it.
Yeah, that's true. I call it account-based BD, because when I started learning about account-based marketing, I'm like, this is what I've been doing forever as a BD person. This isn't anything new. It's just the words that are new. Okay, all right. Let's jump into round two here of the BD Dojo event, and so you talk about the teams and how they're working together. Marketing, BD, and sales all have distinctive, different functions. Where should those teams be putting their attention? On the accounts that are showing intent, or on the accounts that you just don't see yet and they probably don't think they have a need for your solution, or you don't think they have a need for your solution? So which of those two groups really, it's, do you focus on the 7% here, the 7 to 10% that's in market, or do you focus on that other 90% that you think, man, probably not interested yet? What do you say?
I definitely think that there needs to be a balance so that you're covering both your long-term revenue goals and your short-term revenue goals. So focusing just on the 10% that are supposedly in market can lead to shorter sales cycles, but also lower deal sizes, depending if you're competing with, you're in RFP competition, or the prospect comes to you and they already have predefined needs. So they have a smaller deal size. But what I've seen is that a lot of intent is very speculative, and it gives you maybe a false positive. And there's often a lag in the data. So when a company shows that they're in market with you, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stay with you, or if they're going to sign that deal with you. So if the goal of ABM or account-based strategy is to drive that longest term revenue growth, so you want clients that are going to land with you and expand with you. So that's what I think the level of relevance in an ABM program, an account-based program, is really important. So I want to give you an example of this. We had a client that was in the facility management service industry. They had aggressive growth goals. They wanted to reach 1 billion in market share by 2030. And they had an ABM program in place with another firm, but they were consistently missing month over month, quarter over quarter, and year over year quota and revenue targets. And they had invested in Zoom Info's marketing operating system. So they were focusing on accounts with intent. So they were only using like specific keywords. And that reliance on the intent data kept them from aligning with their core or their best fit customers. So intent data, if you don't have any context around it, it's kind of just noise. You need to get peel back the layers and see, why is there intent in the first place? So if we react to signals and engagement data versus responding with an understanding of why there was intent in the first place, it's a different conversation. So that why should really guide your messaging. It should guide your content, the interactions, and the experiences. And that's from start to finish. So I'm talking from initial engagement all the way through to their customer and staying a long-term customer. So that all that has to be taken into consideration. So I'm a strong believer that you take intent, but you also need to figure out what's behind that intent. You need some additional insights. When we're focusing just on the signals or just on these intent, we kind of miss that big picture of what's going on behind closed doors that's causing this intent in the first place. Are they looking for a new vendor or a new solution? Are they just reading to stay in the know? But there is no predictiveness with this intent if they're going to close with you, or if they're going to close at a high ACV, or if they're going to grow with you and be a long-term partner. So that's my problem with intent and relying solely on intent. I could go on that, but let's leave it at that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot we can do to drill down on the topic of intent. And but I have to say, for this round, I'm jumping off the top rope and giving you a high five on this one, Kristina, because I absolutely agree. The first thing you said was making sure that you've balanced your outbound and your inbound resources. So if you focus just on that top 10% that's supposedly in market, yeah, that's great. But then you can dry up all those resources really quickly. And then you have not built that demand gen engine, that bottom 90% that, you think, oh, maybe they're not interested. They're not in market. Well, it turns out they're probably listening to the podcast that you've been publishing. They probably engaging things in the dark funnel you never even knew about. Or, yeah, they're not interested. But when they do have that challenge, you are top of mind. You are the brand they have highest trust in because they've heard your name before. And that's why marketing is so important. The content that marketing creates is so critical, but you have to balance the input, your efforts. And then the other thing I really liked what you said, Kristina, is intent signals are great. Okay, so what? Do you know your ICP? Do you know your ideal customer profile? Have you validated what that signal meant? Are they just tire kickers? Do they have high intent? Are they ready to engage right now? And that's where business development comes in. Our role is to give them a call and say, hey, I see you attended our webinar. Just checking, are you just casually interested? Oh, you are interested. Okay, great. And then we go into the whole qualification process of, do you have a budget? What's your schedule? Do you have a need? All those things that we do to help qualify. And then we figure out how can we nurture them. And we do that with marketing to say, hey, let's give them some content on this use case scenario. I think it's really tailored to their need. And I really like the example that you gave with the facilities company, Kristina. That's great. And congratulations on that success. Okay, let's jump into round 3 of our event here. You mentioned that ABM is not for necessarily sourcing pipeline. And you mentioned that what I described was essentially account-based demand gen. Can you share the difference between ABM and demand gen, since you're using those two terms now? And for those two things, when should they come together and create kind of an account-based go-to-market strategy?
Okay, I know it gets kind of confusing because if you're not familiar with these terms as a sales leader or a salesperson, it gets a little tricky. So demand gen is really the initial engagement and learning about the company, learning about solutions and offerings. ABM, I would put as the next step. So this is where you can get a more relevant, take a more tailored approach to them. And so it's demand gen puts them into the funnel, or let's say puts them into the journey, and then ABM would should be accelerating them. So once they reach a certain engagement or intent threshold, or they've shown signs of being part of your active ICP as they have that strategic priority in place, or maybe they're being impacted by a critical or key event. But we need to make sure that we're putting the right accounts into the pipeline that sales and marketing teams, so they could prioritize their time, resources, and focus on. Because if we're just filling with leads just for the sake of filling leads, then it's wasting everyone's time. So demand gen campaigns, messaging, and content need to go beyond driving awareness to with a broader market and kind of focus on the accounts that you want to see you and your solution and offering and your company as a must-have versus a nice-to-have. So that's almost the next step: demand gen, then ABM, and then this goes back to also defining your ICP beyond demographics, technographics, revenue levels, these generic kind of triggers that we have or generic measurements we have. We want to align the demand gen to bring in more accounts that are going to match that ICP. And then demand gen is, think of it this way. So demand gen casts that wider net, and we want to cast a wider net that's going to attract more of the whales, quote unquote, that we're looking for, rather than just a bunch of minnows and, some medium and larger fish mixed in. So we want to figure out how we're going to move accounts to revenue faster, higher ACV, which is what ABM essentially really should be about. It needs to be closest to the seller and the sales team, and even the customers, depending if you want to do a customer play for expansion. So I tell clients to focus on where you want to go with an account and the experiences that you want to create, and then work backward until you get to demand gen. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but trust me. So we need to know where we're going to go before we can kind of set a direction with demand gen. Otherwise, you do wind up with the leads for sake of leads. And then that's why sales might lose their trust in marketing, might do their own thing, might totally disconnect from marketing because we're not delivering on our end, so that sales can be successful.
Yeah, I like that. I really like what you said about understanding what those intent signals mean and understanding how the intent signals interact with one another, right? You could have some firms have intent signal scores that show, okay, based on those high ACV customers that we already have, we watched their intent signals. We watched how they engage with our content as they were making the journey from the awareness phase into the activation phase, engaging with business development, and then through the conversion phase. And then we're even tracking them once they're in the success phase and growth phases after their clients. Are they providing us referrals? And then what we can do is we can backtrack and look at how those intent signals presented themselves for those ICP prospects and customers, and then really refine our scoring system that says, okay, look, if they went to a webinar and then they asked for a use case scenario and then they did this and they did this, these are showing intent signals that forecast that this will be a high ACV customer for us. And this is where it's so critical, I think, that BD and marketing come together and we're constantly communicating back and forth of, hey, I saw this intent signal and it really didn't present itself. What's going on? Or we had the score and we thought the score was locked in and we thought this would be a high conversion, high P win prospect. And it's what happened. Maybe we need to modify our marketing content, what we're telling them in the activation phase and maybe even the awareness phase. So this is, at the end of the day, folks, it constant back and forth and dialogue between BD, marketing, sales, customer success is critical. The whole go-to-market team has to come together. And Kristina, I know I could talk to you for hours about this topic. You and I could probably come up with a couple of new labels and terms to describe these things too.
No, thank you. I have enough. Every time I get a new one, I'm like, wait, do I know what this one means, or is it just a new acronym?
Yeah, I bet we could, but I think we had a great discussion today. We've gone through three rounds in the first BD Dojo episode. I think round one, we agreed to disagree on what we actually call these things, but we fundamentally agreed that at the end of the day, through round 2 and 3 of our discussion, that BD marketing, we have to be joined at the hip. We have to understand our ICP. We have to understand those intent signals and the content that supports those intent signals and constantly collaborate back and forth because the market is constantly changing. What worked yesterday, intent signals, content, messaging, doesn't work today. And so you have to be constantly refining. And you can only do that when you're working together as one common team. And today we did that. Kristina, I appreciate you stepping into the dojo and going in a little hand-to-hand academic combat here as we talk through things. But I think we walk out of the ring joined at the hip as one team, one fight. And so, Kristina, before we end the episode, can you tell folks a little bit about the work that you do and how folks can follow it and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So our organization, Personal ABM, is all about getting relevant to the key target accounts. So I'm talking about the enterprise level accounts, the bigger deals, the ones that are going to be the stickiest kind of accounts. And we work with not mostly. We work with B2B companies in a variety of industries, but mostly technology, SaaS platforms, supply chain, complex sales is where we fit the best. And you can reach us at personalabm.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, and you can follow content on that as well.
You are very active on LinkedIn, and thank you so much for actively engaging with my post. I hope to hear some more engagement from you, Kristina. And folks, please follow Kristina, engage with her, follow her work. It's fascinating. It's critical for every business developer to learn how to follow and work with our marketing teammates every step of the way so we can maximize growth. Kristina, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all your contributions to the business development profession and helping all of us grow together.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.